The darkness outside your window isn't empty tonight. It hums with the unspoken, the unseen, the moments that twist and turn until you're not sure which way is up anymore. Tonight, we journey into that hum, into the quiet corners of the mind where fear takes root and blossoms into something truly unsettling. You're invited to lean in closer, to let the world outside fade away. Turn off the lights, put your headphones on, and let the whispers begin. Because sometimes the most terrifying stories are the ones that feel like they could happen to anyone, anywhere, even to you. Are you ready to see what's waiting just beyond the edge of the familiar? The car that pulled up was a charcoal gray sedan, not the silver Honda Accord the app showed. Usually, I wouldn't have thought twice, figuring a driver might be using a rental or a family car, but something about its dark, nondescript shape felt off. It was almost midnight, and I was standing alone in front of my friend's house in a quiet, tree-lined suburb, the kind of place where streetlights hummed and porch lights were already off. My phone battery was at 5%, barely enough to confirm the license plate, which, to my relief, matched what was on the app. Still, the car was a completely different make and color. I hesitated, my hand on the door handle, then shrugged it off. It was late, I was tired, and I just wanted to be home. I slid into the back seat, clicking the seatbelt into place. The interior was clean, almost stark, with no personal items, no air freshener, just the faint scent of something metallic. The driver, a man in his late 40s or early 50s, didn't turn around or offer a greeting. He just looked straight ahead, his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, waiting. His profile was sharp, almost hawkish, and his dark hair was neatly combed. I gave him my address, the usual 5-mile trip across town, expecting the typical long day or busy night. Small talk. He just gave a curt nod and pulled away from the curb, merging silently onto the main road. The lack of interaction was a little unsettling, but I was also okay with it. Sometimes you just want quiet. About 10 minutes into the ride, I realized we were going the wrong way. My apartment was due east, a straight shot down Main Street for a few miles, then a quick left. Instead, he took a right onto Elm, a route that would lead us through an older, industrial part of town, adding at least 15 minutes to the drive. My first thought was that he was trying to avoid traffic, but at this hour, Main Street was practically empty. I checked my phone, but it had died completely. "Excuse me," I said, leaning forward slightly. "I think you took a wrong turn. My place is the other way on Main Street." He didn't respond immediately. His eyes flickered to the rearview mirror for a split second, then back to the road. "Shortcut," he mumbled, his voice a low, gravelly sound. "Avoiding lights." The shortcut made no sense. We passed abandoned warehouses and dark, empty lots. The streetlights here were sparser, casting long, eerie shadows. There was no traffic to avoid, just silence and the hum of the engine. I noticed he didn't have a phone mounted on his dashboard. No GPS visible, which was highly unusual for a rideshare driver. Most of them relied heavily on the app for navigation. I swallowed, a dryness suddenly in my throat. I tried to pull up the rideshare app on my dead phone again, just out of habit, but it remained a blank, black rectangle. I told myself he was just an older driver, maybe set in his ways, maybe knew a route I didn't. But the pit in my stomach was growing cold and heavy. As we drove deeper into the unfamiliar industrial zone, I tried the door handle just to reassure myself. It didn't budge. I tried the other one, also locked. Child locks, I thought, that's all it is. Many rideshare drivers use them to prevent passengers from opening doors prematurely, but the logical explanation felt flimsy. My breath hitched slightly. I considered asking him to unlock them, but then what? What if he refused? What if he heard the click? I decided against it, my heart starting to pound an irregular rhythm against my ribs. The silence in the car was thick, punctuated only by the low rumble of the tires on the poorly maintained road. I stared out the window, trying to memorize landmarks, though there were none, just a blur of dark, skeletal trees and silent, hulking buildings. He continued driving, not fast, not slow, just a steady, deliberate pace that felt endless. We were now completely off any main roads I recognized, driving down what looked like a narrow country lane, barely wide enough for two cars, bordered by dense woods on both sides. The only light came from the sedan's headlights, cutting a tunnel through the oppressive darkness. I kept looking at the rearview mirror, trying to catch his eye, but he never looked back, his gaze fixed straight ahead. My mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. Yelling? What good would that do out here? Fighting? He was a large man. I felt utterly helpless, trapped in the back of a car with a stranger who seemed to be taking me deeper and deeper into nowhere. The fear was a cold, creeping sensation, not a sudden shock. Then his phone rang. Not the rideshare app tone, but a standard cell phone ring. He ignored it. It rang again, a persistent, chirpy melody that grated on my nerves. He still didn't answer. I watched his hand clench tighter on the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The third time it rang, he let out a frustrated sigh, a small, involuntary sound that was the first real emotion he'd shown. He pulled over to the side of the road, the car shuddering to a halt amidst the tall grass and shadowy trees. The sudden stop made my heart leap into my throat. He finally picked up, holding the phone to his ear, his back still completely turned to me. I couldn't make out what he was saying, his voice a low, urgent murmur, but I could hear a faint, irritated female voice on the other end. He listened for a long moment, then spoke, his voice tight. I know, he muttered. Just, this one insisted on being picked up and I was already out. I'm almost done. He paused, listening again. No, she's quiet. She hasn't said anything since. He trailed off, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror. This time our eyes met. His were dark, unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in them, annoyance, maybe, or something colder. He quickly looked away. Look, I'm just trying to make my quota, he continued, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. She'll be home soon. Just a few more minutes, then I'll head back. Just don't complain to the company again. It's a mess. The conversation continued in hushed tones, but I had heard enough. He ended the call, took a deep breath, and put the car back in drive. He made a U-turn and headed back the way we came, his previous sense of purpose replaced by a clear, visible irritation. He drove quickly now, almost recklessly, back through the industrial area, then onto Main Street, taking the most direct route. He pulled up to my apartment building a few minutes later, braking sharply. The doors unlocked with a soft thud. I scrambled out, my legs wobbly, mumbling a hurried thank you that he didn't acknowledge. He just drove off, the charcoal sedan disappearing into the night, leaving me standing on the curb, shaking. I never reported him. What would I say? That he took the long way, and his wife called to complain he was picking up an extra fare off app? That he locked the doors? It was too vague, too deniable. But I never took a rideshare at night again without a full phone battery and a friend to track me. It's a strange thing, how a simple journey can unravel everything you thought you knew. How the landscape shifts, not just outside the window, but deep within you. And just when you think you've found your footing again, the path takes another unexpected turn, leading you somewhere you never intended to go. The glowing dot on my phone screen, showing the little car icon, wasn't moving. It just sat there, 2 blocks away, for a full 5 minutes, even though the app said, arriving now. I was standing under the meager overhang of a closed coffee shop, trying to stay out of the drizzle, waiting for my ride home after a late shift. It was almost 1 a.m., and the street was pretty much deserted. I had just finished up a double at the diner, serving lukewarm coffee and burnt toast to the last few stragglers, and all I wanted was my bed. My apartment was only a 15-minute drive away, usually, but walking wasn't an option at that hour, not in this part of town. I checked the app again, hoping it was just a GPS glitch, but the dot was still stubbornly parked. Finally, a car pulled up, slowing down a little past me, then reversing. It was a dark sedan, not quite the model I remembered seeing in the app, but close enough in the dim light. The driver's side window was heavily tinted, which made it hard to see inside. The back passenger door clicked open, and I hesitated for a split second. The license plate matched, though. That was the main thing. I was tired, cold, and my phone battery was running low, so I just shrugged it off as another minor inaccuracy of the app. I slid into the back seat, pulling the door shut behind me, and mumbled, "Thanks for the pickup." The driver didn't respond. The car was quiet, almost too quiet. No radio, no ambient noise, just the low hum of the engine and the soft patter of rain against the windows. I leaned forward slightly, trying to catch a glimpse of the driver's face in the rearview mirror, but it was angled down, reflecting only the dark fabric of the seat. "Hey!" I tried again, a little louder, just heading to 1420 Elm Street. Still nothing. I figured maybe they were just one of those drivers who preferred silence, or maybe they had their Bluetooth earbuds in and couldn't hear me well. I pulled out my phone, intending to put in my headphones, but the screen flashed low battery before dying completely. Great. We were moving now, turning off the main road. I knew this route like the back of my hand, and this wasn't the way to Elm Street. This was the direction of the industrial park, warehouses, and then open fields. Excuse me," I said, my voice a little less confident this time. "This isn't the usual way to Elm Street. Are you taking a detour?" The driver's hands were visible on the steering wheel, unnaturally still. They didn't twitch, didn't tap, just held the wheel firmly. There was no response, no nod, no flicker of movement. The silence in the car felt heavy, pressing in on me. A knot started to form in my stomach. This was definitely not right. My hand instinctively went to the door handle. It was one of those interior handles, not the little latch. I pulled. Nothing. I pulled harder. It wouldn't budge. I tried the other back door handle. Same thing. I even tried the child lock switch, fumbling with it in the dark, but it was already in the locked position. A cold wave washed over me. My breath hitched. The doors were locked, and I couldn't open them. I stared at the driver's silent, still figure. The dark tint of the window made it impossible to see if they were looking back at me, if they even registered my attempts. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was a nightmare. We continued driving, passing the familiar landmarks of the industrial park, the old textile factory, the abandoned storage units, the glow of the gas station sign in the distance, slowly fading behind us. The car picked up speed, the needle on the speedometer steadily climbing. My mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. Yelling seemed pointless. It was a sealed metal box, and there was no one around to hear me anyway. I thought about trying to kick out a window, but the thought was immediately dismissed. That would only make things worse, potentially causing an accident, and I had no idea what this person was capable of. The sheer quiet was the most terrifying thing. We were on a long, unlit stretch of road now, the kind that connects towns but isn't really used by anyone who doesn't live out there. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but the road was still slick and black. The only light came from our own headlights, carving a tunnel through the oppressive darkness. I kept my eyes fixed on the rearview mirror, trying to catch any movement, any sign of life from the driver, but they remained a shadowy, unmoving silhouette. Felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. My throat was dry, my palms sweaty. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to do something, anything, but I was frozen by a terrifying uncertainty. Then, without warning, The car slowed down slightly and turned off the main road onto an even smaller, unpaved track. This track was barely visible, just two ruts in the dirt, bordered by tall, whispering trees. The bumps and jolts of the road were more pronounced now, rattling through the car. My stomach lurched. This wasn't just a detour anymore. This felt deliberate, malicious. My eyes darted around the interior, searching for anything. A loose object, a sharp edge, anything I could use. But the car was meticulously clean, empty of anything useful. I felt a cold dread seep into my bones, a realization that I was utterly, completely alone and at this person's mercy. The car eventually came to a slow, silent stop. We were deep in the woods, or what felt like it, judging by the dense canopy above and the absolute lack of any man-made light. The engine cut out, plunging us into an even deeper silence, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant croak of a frog. I held my breath, every muscle tensed, ready to bolt, ready to fight, but the doors were still locked. The driver sat there, still, for what felt like an eternity. Then, I saw a subtle movement in the rearview mirror. The driver's arm slowly lifted, reaching for something in the center console. My heart hammered. This was it. Instead of pulling out a weapon, the driver reached for a small, dark object. It was a phone, and they slowly, deliberately, typed something into it. A soft, automated voice then filled the car, coming not from the driver, but from the phone itself. "You have reached your destination." My jaw dropped. The driver then leaned forward, pressing a button, and the locks on all four doors simultaneously clicked open. They still didn't look at me, still didn't speak. I stumbled out of the car, my legs shaky, taking in the dark, unfamiliar surroundings. We were parked at the very end of a forgotten cul-de-sac, in what looked like a half-finished subdivision from decades ago, surrounded by overgrown trees. I later found out that a new mapping app, still in beta, had recently been testing routes for rideshares, sometimes taking drivers on the most direct path, even if it was through undeveloped, unlit areas or on roads that barely existed. The driver had just been following the directions on their phone, completely oblivious to my terror, maybe even hard of hearing, and likely thought I was just being impatient. But the thought of being locked in that car, hurtling through the dark with a silent, unresponsive driver, on what felt like a one-way trip to nowhere, still sends shivers down my spine. And to this day, I can't shake the feeling that they knew exactly what they were doing. The echoes of what's been lost often linger, a faint signal in the static of everyday life. Sometimes you just can't seem to break free from the patterns, the repetition that slowly, subtly starts to feel like a cage. And the harder you try to escape, the tighter the loop becomes. The first thing I noticed was the faint smell of old coffee grounds. Not stale, but like they'd just been used and then forgotten in the back of the car. It was almost 2 a.m. and the rain had started up again. A soft, steady drumming against the roof of the sedan. I just finished a double shift at the diner, my feet aching, and all I wanted was my bed. My phone had died an hour earlier, but I'd managed to flag down a rideshare that pulled up just as I was about to give up. The driver, a stocky man with a baseball cap pulled low, just grunted a greeting when I confirmed my destination. I slid into the back, pulling my backpack close, and watched the streetlights streak by. We drove for a few minutes, the windshield wipers swishing a rhythmic lullaby. My neighborhood wasn't far, mostly residential streets with big oak trees that formed a canopy overhead. I knew the turns by heart, so when he passed the familiar exit for Elm Street, my street, I frowned. Maybe there was construction? I leaned forward a little, my voice raspy from exhaustion. "Excuse me, I think you missed the turn for Elm. It's the next right." The driver didn't respond, didn't even glance in the rearview mirror. He just kept driving, his hands tight on the wheel, eyes fixed straight ahead. A flicker of unease started to prickle at the back of my neck. I repeated myself, A little louder this time, trying to keep my tone light. Casual. "Sir, I think you took a wrong turn. My street was back there." Still nothing. He might as well have been a mannequin. The radio was off. The air conditioning hummed faintly, and the only other sound was the tires on the wet asphalt. We were now on a stretch of road I didn't recognize, a darker, less populated area where houses were sparse and the streetlights were further apart. My heart started to beat a little faster. This wasn't right. This wasn't just a mistake. I pulled out my dead phone again, a useless brick, wishing I could just check the GPS. I tried the door handle. It didn't budge. My breath hitched. I tried the other one on the passenger side. Also locked. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a standard car setting. Usually you can open a back door from the inside even if the driver locks them. A wave of genuine panic began to rise in my throat. I tried to stay calm, to think. Maybe it was an automatic child lock? But no, it felt more solid than that. I leaned forward again, my voice now trembling. "Hey, let me out. You're going the wrong way." He still didn't respond. His profile in the dim glow of the dashboard looked almost serene, like he was on a leisurely Sunday drive. We turned onto an even smaller road, one that wound through what looked like an industrial park, all dark warehouses and chain-link fences. It was completely deserted. Then, almost 10 minutes later, he made a sharp U-turn. My stomach lurched. We were heading back the way we came. I watched, my eyes wide and unblinking, as we passed the same dark warehouses, the same chain-link fences. He drove us back onto the road that led to my neighborhood, past my missed turn again, and then, without hesitation, made the exact same wrong turn into the industrial park. He was doing a loop, a silent, terrifying loop. I started banging on the window, then on the back of his seat. "What are you doing? Let me out. I'm going to call the police." My voice cracked, raw with fear. He remained absolutely unresponsive, a statue behind the wheel. The second loop was identical to the first. He passed the same landmarks, made the same turns, the same U-turn. Each time, my hope plummeted, replaced by a colder, deeper terror. Was he messing with me? Was this some kind of twisted game? Or something far, far worse? My mind raced, trying to find an explanation, any explanation, for this silent, repeating nightmare. On the third loop, as we approached the main street of my neighborhood again, I saw a police cruiser parked near the corner store, its lights off. A small, desperate spark of hope ignited within me. This was my chance. I started yelling, screaming, pounding on the windows with everything I had. I tried to shatter the glass, but it was too thick, too strong. I screamed for help, for attention, for anything. The cruiser was so close, but the driver, without even a flicker of acknowledgement, passed it by. He didn't swerve, didn't slow down, didn't even seem to notice. And then, he made the familiar wrong turn into the industrial park once more. My voice gave out. My throat was raw. I slumped back against the seat, tears streaming down my face. There was no escape. Not here. Not in this car, with this silent, unmoving driver who seemed to be driving me in circles for no reason at all. I thought about my family, about my quiet little apartment, about the diner. It all felt impossibly far away, like a life I used to have. The rain continued its steady rhythm. The scent of old coffee grounds was still there, faint but distinct. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the repeating darkness outside, but the image of those identical warehouses was burned into my mind. Then, without warning, the car lurched to a stop. We were back on Elm Street, my street, right in front of my apartment building. The driver had pulled over perfectly. He didn't say a word, didn't look at me. The locks clicked open with a soft, mechanical sound. I scrambled out, my legs wobbly, barely able to stand. I didn't look back. I just ran, fumbling with my keys, bursting through my apartment door and locking it behind me, my heart hammering against my ribs. I sank to the floor, shaking uncontrollably, listening for the sound of the car driving away. But there was no sound, no engine, no tires on wet pavement, nothing. After what felt like an eternity, I finally dared to peek through the blinds. The street was empty, completely empty. No car, no lights, no sign he had ever been there. I checked my phone, still dead. Couldn't even call anyone. For days afterward, I checked my rideshare app. There was no record of a trip that night. Nothing. It was like the whole thing had been erased or never happened at all. But I knew it did. I still smell old coffee grounds sometimes, even when there's no coffee nearby, and I still can't shake the feeling of those locked doors and the silent, repeating loops through the dark industrial park. There are places where the air itself feels different, heavy with a history you can't quite grasp. Places where the map seems to lie, or perhaps it's simply guiding you towards something that was always there, waiting just off the main road, out of sight. The blinking GPS on my phone showed the blue line veering sharply off the expected route. Not a gentle curve, but a sudden, aggressive detour onto a road I didn't recognize. I was 22, working a late shift at a diner just outside of town, and it was almost 1 in the morning. My car had broken down earlier that week, so I was relying on rideshares for a few days, usually not a problem. This particular driver, a guy named Marcus according to the app, had picked me up on time. He was quiet, which I appreciated after a long shift. The ride had been uneventful until that moment, when the familiar main road home gave way to an unfamiliar residential street, darker than it should have been. I glanced at the rearview mirror, trying to catch Marcus's eye, but he was staring straight ahead, his face a shadowed profile against the dim glow of the dashboard. The silence in the car was suddenly heavy, not just quiet, but a deliberate, almost oppressive quiet. I cleared my throat, feeling a little foolish, like I was about to ask a dumb question. "Hey, Marcus?" I started, my voice sounding a bit too loud in the stillness. Are we still going to Elm Street? My apartment is just off Elm. Usually this isn't the way. My finger hovered over the map on my phone, which now showed us deep into a tangle of side streets, moving in the wrong direction. He didn't respond immediately, just a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of his head. The GPS voice, which had been guiding us smoothly for the first 10 minutes of the trip, had also gone silent. I realized I hadn't heard a single direction from it since we turned off the main highway about 5 minutes ago. I looked down at my phone again. The app still showed the active ride, still displayed Marcus's name and car model, but the estimated time of arrival was now fluctuating wildly, jumping from 5 minutes to 15, then back to 10. It was like the system itself was confused, or maybe trying to recalculate something that wasn't making sense. My stomach tightened. A prickle of unease started to spread through me. I instinctively reached for the door handle, just a casual, unconscious movement. Something I always do when I'm about to get out of a car. My fingers closed around the cold metal, but it wouldn't budge. I tried again, a little more force, a little more deliberate. Nothing. The door was locked. All the doors were locked. I knew because I could hear the faint click as I tested each one, the telltale sound of a central locking system engaging. Marcus still said nothing, still stared straight ahead, as if he hadn't noticed my small, growing panic. The streetlights here were spaced further apart, casting long, deep shadows. I pulled my phone closer, the screen a small beacon in the oppressive dark of the car. We were now on Willow Creek Road, a narrow, winding stretch that eventually led out of town, past the old abandoned mill and towards the county line. This was absolutely not the way to Elm Street. This was the exact opposite direction. I tried to sound calm, tried to keep my voice even, but a tremor was starting to creep in. "Marcus, you've gone the wrong way." My place is back towards downtown, not out here. Can you please turn around? I gripped my phone tighter, my thumb hovering over the share trip status button. Then the call emergency services option. I just needed him to acknowledge me. He finally spoke, his voice low, almost a murmur, and it sent a chill down my spine. Just a little detour, he said, not looking at me. A shortcut. But there were no shortcuts out here. Just empty fields, dark stretches of woods, and the occasional dilapidated farmhouse. The moonlight, when it managed to peek through the heavy cloud cover, only made the landscape seem more desolate. We passed the sign for the old mill, its rusted machinery a skeletal silhouette against the bruised sky. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. My phone had less than 20% battery. I needed to do something, but every part of me was frozen, trying to process the impossible situation. I risked another glance in the rearview mirror, and this time Marcus caught my eye, not with a reassuring smile, not with an apology for the wrong turn, but with a gaze that was utterly devoid of warmth, a flat, unsettling stare that lasted only a second but felt like an eternity. There was nothing in his eyes that suggested he was just a confused driver. There was something else there, something cold and calculating. That single glare confirmed everything my gut had been screaming at me. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. We sped past the last street lamp, plunging us into near total darkness, the only light coming from our own headlights cutting a path through the unknown. A few drops of rain started to hit the windshield, turning into a steady patter that echoed the frantic beat of my heart. I tried to call a friend, but my signal was spotty out here, the call failing to connect. I tried again, my fingers fumbling. The car felt like a coffin on wheels, sealed and moving with a terrifying purpose. I could feel the cold seeping in through the windows, or maybe it was just my own fear manifesting physically. The driver remained utterly silent, his hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white. He hadn't slowed down, hadn't acknowledged the rain, hadn't done anything to break the terrifying quiet he had imposed. The world outside was a blurry, dark canvas. Then, without warning, he braked sharply. The car skidded slightly on the wet asphalt before coming to a complete stop in the middle of nowhere. No houses, no streetlights, just the dark outline of trees on either side of the road. My head jolted forward, and I gasped. He turned off the engine, plunging us into absolute silence, save for the rhythmic drumming of the rain on the roof. He still didn't look at me. He just sat there, breathing. The air in the car was thick, unbreathable. I stared at his profile, waiting, dreading whatever came next, my mind racing through every single horror story I'd ever heard, knowing this was probably how they all began. My phone battery icon was now red, critically low. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 20 seconds, he reached into the glove compartment. My muscles tensed, ready to scream, to kick, to fight. He pulled out a small, heavy-duty flashlight and clicked it on. The beam, shockingly bright, wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at the dashboard, specifically at the rideshare app on his mounted phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then slowly, deliberately, reached over and unlocked my door. The faint click was deafening. He then pointed the flashlight at the dark, empty road ahead. "Battery died," he mumbled, his voice flat. "Needed to see what I was doing. You can get out here if you want to walk. My phone's dead. I can't take you any further." I stumbled out of the car, my legs shaky, almost collapsing on the wet ground. The driver just watched me, the flashlight beam a steady circle on the dashboard. He hadn't moved to restart the car. He just sat there, a silent, unmoving figure in the pitch-black car. I started walking, not looking back, the fear still a cold knot in my stomach. I walked for nearly an hour, shivering in the rain, until I saw the faint glow of distant streetlights. When I finally made it home, soaked and exhausted, the rideshare app on my dead phone still showed the ride as in progress, with Marcus, or whoever he was, still listed as the driver. I never reported it. I just couldn't bring myself to. The thought of that blank stare, that silent detour, and the chilling realization that he had complete control over my fear, still keeps me up at night. These stories, like shadows at dusk, linger long after the light has gone. They remind us that the real horror isn't always a monster under the bed, but the slow, creeping dread that can take hold in the most ordinary of places, in the most ordinary of lives. It's the unsettling truth that sometimes the only way out is deeper in, and the questions these tales leave us with are often more terrifying than any answer. If you found yourself caught in tonight's shadows, consider joining us for a new story every week.